Second, on school improvement, we've shown through our Academies programme, our National Challenge Trusts, the whole National Challenge programme, our determination that if schools are underperforming or coasting, then we will bring in new leadership to turn them round. Our manifesto goes further and empowers parents to say, if they're not satisfied with how things are going in their school, they can say, we want a change of leadership. And we are saying, and I've said in our manifesto, we think we could have 1,000 schools by 2015 in our new chains of the top providers. The Tories oppose that approach. They tell parents unhappy with the current school that they have to go it alone and set up a school for themselves down the road. But for the majority of parents who don't have the time or the know-how to run their own school, their children would be left behind. The school they're in would be allowed to wither, with the funding and the best teachers leaving their school to go to new schools down the road. And as the letter in The Guardian today makes clear from 51 head teachers, they say rather than steady investment in the whole system, there would be across-the-board cuts coupled with boutique experiments borrowed as a result of naive educational tourism. That is the head teacher's verdict today on the Conservative free market schools policy. So we'll empower parents, we'll back our best school leaders to keep standards rising. The Tories again will abandon parents to do it all by themselves, and millions of pupils would be left behind to a future of declining funding, falling standards, or both. Third, we will give our school leavers the resources they need. That's why we've made a fully costed cast iron guarantee that funding per pupil will rise this year, next year, and the year after by over 2%. In contrast, and this happened twice yesterday, the Conservatives refused to match our pledge of rising funding for the next 3 years for schools. Instead, as the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said, schools are the biggest unprotected budget in the Conservative plans this year. George Osborne has promised 6 billion cuts this year. That would mean for schools a £1.7 billion cut starting in just a few weeks' time were the Conservatives to win the election. And we've calculated today, and we set out in the document on a cautious basis, if we apply that 1.7 billion across the education budget, for schools that would mean a cut of just over £1 billion. Nearly 80% of schools' budgets go for staff. This would work out at a reduction of 14,000 teachers. A total of 20,000 teachers and classroom support staff would have to go this year. When you add in back office staff as well, that would mean over 38,000 people losing their jobs or not being hired in the current year. So the Conservatives would pay for that £1.7 billion cut. On average, that is one teacher, support staff or back office for every primary school this year. And for secondary schools, it would mean 5 jobs lost for every secondary school in the country, leading to larger class sizes, less individual attention for pupils. And before the Conservatives say they can just find £1.7 billion in the school's budget by efficiencies, let them explain how they can do that. And let them explain this not just to us, but to all the head teachers and school bursars who are already planning for a tight settlement for the next 3 years under our plans, and also to the millions of pupils and parents who would see teachers and staff laid off this year from their schools. And let them also explain, on top of that £1.7 billion reduction this year, also how they would pay for their free market schools policy and also for their national pupil premium without even bigger cuts in the years to come. So under the Tories, no guarantees to pupils, parents abandoned, funding cut from every existing school with layoffs this year. With Labour, clear guarantees so that every child succeeds, more safer parents and a bigger role for the best school leaders, all backed by rising funding year on year. That is the choice, empowerment versus abandonment, us investing, the Conservatives laying off staff, excellence for all under Labour, excellence just for the few under the Conservatives.
Thank you, Ed, very much indeed, and happy to take your questions. Laura?
Thank you. Good morning. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News. It's a question for Mr Bowles, if I may. You worked at Gordon Brown's side for many years at the Treasury, and in the last 24 hours he has said on bank regulation that he made a mistake. Now, despite over recent months he's repeatedly said the recession was a worldwide phenomenon, it was not a problem that was created here, he has now admitted that nationally we should have been regulating more. You shouldn't listen to the industry when they say this is good for us. Why has it taken him so long to come clean and admit that he made mistakes on bank regulation? I
think, to be fair to Gordon, he said that many times over the last couple of years, and so have I and others who were involved in that period. During the period, particularly the mid part of this decade, I think, in retrospect, regulation should have been tougher. Of course it should have been. I was the city minister for a year, so I made many of these decisions with the FSA. But it's really important to remember, we put in tough statutory regulation in the Financial Services Markets Bill after we came into government in 1997, which was opposed by the Conservative Party. They said we shouldn't have statutory regulation. All the time when I was Financial Services Minister, I was continually attacked by some figures in the city, but also by the Conservative Party, who said we were being much too tough, much too hard, we were going to stifle city innovation and creativity. We had to get the balance right. I don't think we got that balance fully right. We should, in retrospect, have been tougher on some of the investment banks who, to be honest, didn't really know the risks that they were running. That is something which has been a problem for the US government, for the British government, the German government, for the French government, for governments around the world. In retrospect, regulation wasn't tough enough, and under a Labour government, it's going to be much tougher in the future.
Looking at the Prime Minister's words, though, it does appear that he is, for the first time, saying that nationally a mistake was made. He has, as you say, many times said, I wish the world had done more to regulate, and I tried to persuade them to do so, but they didn't do it. But this does appear to be a change in tone, saying mistakes were made here.
It's not actually true, Laura. I've heard him, because I've been with him when he said that, yes, we created a new regulatory framework for the banks when we introduced legislation, when we came to office, when we created the Financial Services Authority, following the deregulatory big bang in the city that the Tories introduced in the 1980s. But that it should have been more intrusive in the way that the regulation operated, and that the regulatory practice of the FSA should have kept pace with the fast changing developments in the financial services sector. So your observation is not quite right. Andrew?
Ed Balls, could you explain why were you so shocked when Channel 4 News told you that Peter Mandelson had described the Labour manifesto as Blair Plus? And Peter Mandelson, were you shocked that Ed Balls was shocked?
Ed, shocked by anything?
It's on tape on Channel 4 News. I don't know if you've seen it.
It was. I have.
And you were off camera, so you were honest.
No, I was half on and half off, wasn't I, Andrew? And that was the.
Andrew, you were all on, but you thought you were off.
No. What actually happened was that Gary Gibbon came over and said, Peter has just said that the Prime Minister will be smiling down from on high on the manifesto.
Tony Blair.
The former Prime Minister, you're right. That Tony Blair said he was smiling down from on high. And as I then tweeted, to Krishna within 10 minutes of the programme, I was pretty sure that Tony Blair was still amongst us. And that was the reason why I was shocked.
No, you didn't. You went up to Gary Gibbon and said, is it really true that Peter Mandelson said this was Blair Plus?
Andrew, it turned out not to be true, didn't it?
Andrew, in answer to... Hold on a moment, Andrew.
I was shocked.
Hold on a moment, you two. The second question was for me.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you go.
And,
you do the shock and all.
and the answer is very simple. The reason why I described it as Blair Plus is because when Tony was Prime Minister, we didn't go as far as we are doing now in industrial policy and activism. And under Tony Blair, we didn't go as far as we're going now in public service reform. And when Tony was Prime Minister, we didn't go as far as we're going to go now with political reform and change to our democratic system. This is why it's Blair Plus.
No, I know why you thought it was Blair Plus.
But you did ask me.
I wanted to know if you were shocked and he was shocked.
Andrew.
I'm not shocked by anything Ed says or does.
Can I just check, the Tories this morning, by the way,
of course it's Blair Plus.
Described Damien McBride as your spin doctor once again. Have you had any contact with him during this campaign or before?
Look, that, as you know, Andrew, Damien lost his job. He made a terrible mistake. He was a friend of mine. Of course, I've spoken to him from time to time, but he's not my spin doctor.
You're still in contact with him?
Okay, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. It's lovely to have you here as ever.